Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. Let's have a look at what it actually takes to make visitors feel welcome in a museum and heritage site. There is one role that's probably the most vital for making sure that visitors have a good experience, and that is that of the front of house team. Now, front of house staff can have many different titles. They can be everything from wardens to visitor assistants to hosts to visitor guides and so on. But it's probably the most versatile role you'll ever come across within the museum and heritage sector. There's so many different skill sets and attitudes and mindsets you as a front of house staff go through during a normal workday, because you meet so many different people. The attitude and mindset and behavior of a front of house staff can make or break the experience when it comes to having a good visitor experience or creating a good visitor experience. So let's just have a look at why is it that front of house staff actually is so important for a museum and a heritage site. First of all, it is the first impression. It's the first face-to-face contact that visitors get. You might have been visiting a museum online, or you might have phoned in and talked to someone, but the first face-to-face contact is usually with a member of the front of house team. Now, that means they represent the place and very much the atmosphere that you're trying to set up here. They also convey information and knowledge about a historical place, for example, and historical knowledge, or about exhibitions, but it can also be about what's happening here. What sort of events and activities do you have on? They set the tone of voice, but they're also there to offer help and support and guidance. They're also very much there to provide safety and security, both of course for visitors, but also very much safety and security of a site and of objects. There are many ways of conveying and communicating a welcoming attitude and atmosphere. I think one of the most obvious one is probably that of a smile. When we smile, we automatically create a connection between two people. Now, I just wanted to give a little example of how important your body language and just a smile can be. Now, here is an example with me at the Lego house, building a Lego house, and I'm there with a very smiling, engaging member of front of house team, who has even given me a helmet on, because obviously we're on a building site. As you can see, we're building houses, and it's just a lovely example of what it can add to an experience. I was probably perfectly capable of having a nice time on my own, but the fact that there was someone there who was willing to kind of engage in a little game, if you like, with me around this, and we actually created a little game and a little fun as two adults around this specific activity. It can really go a long way, and it can add completely new layers to an experience. Also, use your body language. Now, this is actually incredibly important. I have an example here. I just wanted to show you. These two photos are taken from the same museum, and you have a front of house staff here. Both of them have their backs to you. One of them is looking out of an open window, clearly enjoying the weather, probably wishing he was out there in the weather. And he stood there with his back to a rather large group of audience for a rather long time, I have to say. The other one just turned away to have a look at his mobile phone. Now, both of these body languages are not particularly welcoming. You don't really feel like you want to approach this person for any kind of help or support in any way. So give people your attention, offer them your help and your guidance, but also obviously know when to step back and let visitors enjoy an experience. That's very much part of it as well. Not everyone wants to talk to front of house staff, or indeed need the same level of information or attention. Now, also bear in mind that very often front of house staff are wearing a uniform or some kind of identification. So people usually know that you are a member of staff and that you belong to this place, often from your uniform or some kind of identification, meaning clothing often that you are wearing. So it is very visible that you belong to a place. Now, this also means that whenever visitors have complaints, for example, and they grab you to rant to or something like that, You kind of, for them, represent the place. So they are not actually having a go at you personally. They are complaining to the place. And because you're standing in a uniform, you belong to that place, or you represent this place. Also, use your voice. Know when to be loud. For example, when you're talking to a large group of people. Now, we must remember that front of house staff can have many different roles. And here is an example of front of house team in character. So sometimes you actually end up having a rather large audience, and you have to make sure that you can be heard. So if you are on a guided tour or something, make sure that you know when to be loud and make sure that visitors can hear you, but also know when not to disturb. So if there are more than one guided tour going on, for example, know where to stand, where to position yourself in order not to disturb visitors doing other things, activities, or on other guided tour, for example. Now, this is actually also a good example of the different roles of front of house staff, because depending on if you are in character, meaning you are, for example, wearing a costume, like in this example, or if you are in uniform, perhaps with the place's logo or something in a visible place, people will address you differently. It's very unlikely that you're going to take questions about, for example, practicalities like where's the cafe and so on, if you are in character. Whereas if you are in a uniform, those are typically the kind of questions that you will receive, including questions around historical facts and artifacts and so on. So people also look at you differently depending on what kind of role you take on, and obviously based on how you look. Now, this also leads back to what I mentioned before about visitors complaining. You represent the place to them when you are in a uniform. So a complaint is not necessarily aimed at you personally. It is aimed at a place. And sometimes that can be very, very useful just to remind yourself if you are the subject of, let's say, a rant or something, and you actually have to put on a professional attitude. Be engaging and enthusiastic. Show that you really care about this place, that you are really fond of the history, and that you love communicating it. And finally, be patient. It does require a lot of patience having this job. Often you talk to visitors who may not know anything about a place, or who are first-time visitors, and you have been telling the same story over and over and over again, but they have never heard it before. So be patient with their questions and with what you are trying to convey, and with the messages you're trying to convey. Now let's have a look at some of the key skills of front of house staff, because as I said, this is probably one of the most versatile roles you can take on, and there's so many different things you have to be mindful of. First of all, delight your visitors and audiences. It seems so obvious, but this is probably the most important thing. Visitors base their experience as much on how they were welcomed and treated as on what they actually saw and did. Listen to the questions, listen to when people need help. They might not directly ask for it or ask for support or guidance, but listen out for it, because there might be a lot of things you can do just by listening out for what do they need, what are their wishes. A very important key skill is also that of organizing and guidance, so providing wayfinding. Show visitors to specific venues. There is a concert going on, or there is a specific event going on. Handle large and sometimes very long queues. There is a huge element of multitasking in this as well. Knowledge, be informed about the history of a place, but also about what is on, what's happening today, what sort of activities, events is going on today. So the practicalities around is obviously lots of questions about where's the cafe, where are the toilets, and so on and so on. There are lots of practical knowledge as well as information about the history of the place. There are literally no questions that you cannot be asked when you are working as a member of the front of house team. Patience. Now, displaying patience when dealing with, obviously, with sometimes very demanding visitors. Some visitors can also be very difficult indeed, and indeed sort of seek a confrontation even. So the more patience you can display, the better it will be, not just for the visitor who might have some very difficult demands, but also for the atmosphere of the place and other visitors who might be listening in on this conversation. There is absolutely no doubt that being a member of the front of house team is not a job that everyone feels comfortable with. It requires a very special mindset and attitude, but it can also be one of the most rewarding jobs and roles ever in a museum and heritage setting, because you are in direct contact with visitors, often from all over the world, and visitors who come with so many different perspectives, prior knowledge, experiences, wishes and needs when they come to see you. So having an opportunity of actually sharing the knowledge and the fantastic site that you're working on can be really, really rewarding. Let me know about your experiences in this. It's always great to hear from you.